1 2 1 2. We are in. Good morning, everybody. As y'all are checking in, we're just making sure everything is live the way it's supposed to be. We are live. Instagram, good morning. TikTok, good morning. LinkedIn, we are live on LinkedIn. Good morning. We're live on Facebook. Good morning. We're live on Rumble, X, and YouTube. Good morning, everybody. What's going on, TJ, over there on YouTube? Topic here today, we're going to talk about sleeping your way to the top. That's the topic here today. Sleeping your way to the top. Is this a thing? How do we feel about it? What can you do? Maybe with this, if you have this as an option, if it's available to you. That's what we're going to talk about here today. Sleeping your way to the top, and it's a specific story that came out that I want to talk about. What's going on, Lewis, over there on Instagram? Specific story that I want to talk about to frame this, but it's not really about that specific story or even the individuals involved. It's really just about the bigger picture of what this is, why it is, how it works, and how do we feel about it? Is it something that any of you would do or could do? I'm mostly referring to the ladies here, or at least if we're talking about heterosexual sexual engagements. I'm mostly referring to the women being able to do this, but the men who may be in a position to utilize the women who are willing to do it. That's what we're going to talk about here today, because it was a situation that happened over at Fox Sports and a lawsuit that got filed that I'm going to use to frame this. But again, it's not really about those people involved, because I don't really follow those folks like that. But I did hear about it because I do follow the sports world. So let me introduce myself first. My name is Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 35 books on 4 TEDx talks. Create this brand called Work on Your Game. Over here, we help people with their performance, their mindset, their performance, and producing results. That's what we help people do. You want to get your mind in the right place. You can perform at your highest possible level and produce the best results to help you get the outcomes that you want, the rewards that you want. This is the place where it happens. You can find out more about that by going to the links in my profile or bio or in the pinned comment wherever you're watching me. It is workonyourgameuniversity.com. You can also get on my email list for free, but just going to workonmygame.com. Workonmygame.com. Get on my email list. So this topic comes, excuse me. This topic comes from a situation that happened over at Fox Sports. So Fox Sports has, of course, these talking head TV shows where people debate and argue and stuff every day. Y'all see these things almost every sports network or platform has this. So this woman basically filed. She was a stylist for the company. So any of you who's ever done any type of TV or high level production work, you know that before you go on camera, they have people who do your hair and makeup, not only for the women, but also for the men. So it was a woman who was doing the hairstyling. She had built a relationship with this woman who worked at Fox Sports by the name of Joy Taylor. And this lawsuit centers around the hairstylist had an executive at the company come on to her sexually and basically proposition her sexually. And when she declined the sexual proposition from this person who was pretty high up in the company, he was an executive vice president. When she declined the advances of this executive vice president, she ended up getting fired. So basically, she believes, according to our lawsuit, that she was kind of revenge fired by this executive at Fox Sports because she declined this guy's sexual advances. While at the same time, a woman who she had befriended who worked at the company, this woman by the name of Joy Taylor, Miss Taylor had moved up in the company very quickly in a short period of time, even though she didn't have any real bona fides in the sports world, based on, according to what Joy allegedly told this this hairstylist at the company because she was doing Joy's hair before she went on the set. Joy was basically had befriended this hairstylist and was telling her, stylist, period, not just hairstylist, this makeup artist, stylist, whatever she was, makeup artist, I guess. She had told her that she had been sleeping with this executive vice president. That's how she was able to move up. And she was sleeping with one of her co-hosts who also had some say and some power and who got to be on these shows. So this woman allegedly, again, Miss Taylor, it's all alleged, Miss Taylor had moved her way up from being a relative nobody in the sports talk world to a somebody in the sports talk world based on having sex with men who had influence and power in order to move herself up. All the while, she was married to another man. And this is another aspect of the story. She was married to another man, but she was sleeping with dudes at work in order to move herself up in her career. Her husband allegedly got suspicion of this happening and he divorced her. So she's not with this man anymore. She's single, I suppose, today. Again, I don't follow any of these folks, so I'm assuming she's single today. And all of this came out in the lawsuit because of the stylist. When she got fired, she had to put all the details in there that she believes led to what happened to her. So she was using the story of what happened with this other woman who she had befriended, of saying, look, well, this woman slept her way up to the top. So when the executive tried to use me the same way that he used her, and I said no, then, well, first the guy had like made some advances of her, like touched her inappropriately, and she kind of let it go because she wanted to keep her job and keep her money. But then when the guy came to her like trying to get sex and she drew the line at that, that's when she ended up getting fired. And she's suing because she believes she was fired based on this guy asking for sexual favors. And that's the whole game. And that was the lawsuit that came out a couple of days ago. So I'm recording this on a Tuesday. I think the lawsuit came out on like Saturday or Sunday. So that's the story. That's not the entire story. If you want to read the lawsuit, you can find it. Go online, just look up Fox Sports lawsuit, and you can read the whole thing in detail. I think it's about 42 pages long. And it goes into detail about people that some of you may know, some of you may not know. So the conversation here today is about specifically for on both sides. I want to know what the men think about this. Those of you who are, and I'm going to take questions and comments at the end, but I'm going to give you what I think, and then I'm going to see what you all think. I'm going to take questions and comments at the end about if you are a man and you're in a position of, let's say, status or power within an organization, whether that's your organization or one that you work for, like you're an executive at Fox Sports. You don't own it, but you work there and you have a lot of say. And there are women out there who would gladly use what they have physically, use their physical attributes and offer you sex in exchange for you giving them a better job, better position, more money, etc. How would you feel about doing that if you were the executive? How do you feel about it as a man if you're not an executive and you see women moving up in their careers based on this, as opposed to a man who doesn't have this ability to do this because he can't offer sex to another man unless the man happens to be homosexual. Let's just assume that everybody's heterosexual in this situation. How do you feel about a woman being able to kind of leapfrog a man in a job based on her ability to do this, whether she was married or not? The fact that she was married just makes this a more salacious story. But let's just say even if it's a single woman doing something like this, similar stories have been told about. Allegations have been made about Kamala Harris from back in the day. And also, if you're a woman, how do you feel about it? Are you a type of person who would do this? Would you use your attributes and use sex to move yourself up in your career? And some of you may not be willing to admit that out loud, but would you be willing to do this? How do you feel about other women who might be willing to do this or who are actively doing this? Now, how do you feel if and when a man approaches you and he offers this type of proposition to you, whether he says it in so many words or not? All of these things are what we want to address here today, because I think it is an interesting conversation. I think there is more than one way to look at this. Let's start here. So back in the 90s, there was a movie called The Players Club. I don't know if y'all remember The Players Club. The lead actress in the movie was this woman named Lisa Ray. And Bernie Mac was in it. He was prominent in the movie. Jamie Foxx was in the movie. This is probably about 90s. Who knows? When was the Players Club? Like 97? This is like late 90s. Maybe early 2000s. I think late 90s. So in the Players Club, the long and short of the story was this girl was going to college and she was trying to make ends meet. And I believe she had a child. And she was trying to basically look after her child and make money and make ends meet and go to school all at the same time. So she decided finally, I'm going to go work at a strip club to make money, because she saw that as an opportunity to make money, because she was working at a shoe store and some girls came in there and they had money, or at least it appeared that they had money. And she asked them, well, what do y'all do for a living? And they said, well, we work at the strip club. You should come work at the strip club. So she decided to go work at the strip club. And at the strip club, the veteran strippers, they had this saying that they would say all the time: you got to use what you got to get what you want. And that was a saying that they would use to basically justify anything that they were willing to do for or to or with a man in order to get the resources, usually money, that they wanted and the access that they wanted. And they justified all of their behaviors by saying that you got to use what you got to get what you want. Now, speaking as a man, I can't speak from the women's perspective. I understand that there are women out there who will absolutely do this. We know that there are women out there who will do this because, first of all, the strip club has always existed. I've known many strippers in my life, people who are actively stripping, people who are past strippers. I've known people who worked in that life. I've had them as neighbors. I've had them as friends, and we'll leave it at that. And also, these days, now you got OnlyFans. So now you don't even have to go to the strip club. You don't have to go anywhere. You can do this same type of work. Let's just call it sex work, because stripping is a form of sex work, even if you're not actively having sex. You are selling your sexual, what's the word we would use here? Just your sexuality and access to your body, because men get to see it, maybe even touch it and feel it touching them in exchange for money. That's what the strip club is. OnlyFans allows you to do this in a digital sense, to where people can't physically touch you, but they can see everything. You can be suggestive, and this is a very popular platform. So sex work is a thing, and women using what they have to get what they want, i.e. making money. That's what it means. Using your sexuality in some way, shape, or form in order to make yourself money, and doing it as a career, as a business, as a job. This is the thing. It has always been a thing. And stripping is one of the, if you saw the movie The Players Club from back in the day, Bernie Mac talked about that. He was like the guy who owned the strip club. And one of the things that he would say, it was kind of as a joke, but he'd say stripping is one of the oldest businesses in the world. And it is. Actually, sex work is one of the oldest jobs in humanity. Sex work has been around for a very long time. Most of you, the jobs that you're working, that job did not exist before sex work existed. Sex work has always been a thing. So then we have to draw the line between sex work and something such as what women call pretty privilege. Now, pretty privilege and sex work are two different things. Now, ladies can correct me if I got this wrong. Pretty privilege is a woman getting certain things, certain favors, or certain considerations in her favor because she is physically attractive. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to give the man anything in exchange. So pretty privilege might be a woman goes to the bar and sits at the bar by herself, and the bartender is a man, a heterosexual man, and he gives her a couple of free drinks just because she's a pretty girl and the bartender's interested in the girl. All right, that's pretty privilege. But it's not like the woman has to go home with the bartender in exchange for the drinks. That's a whole different ball game than if you're on, let's say you're a sex worker and you decide that you're going to sell yourself in exchange for whatever the man is going to offer. So pretty privilege and sex work are two different levels of things, especially when we're talking about sleeping your way to the top. Because again, the whole conversation here, the question that we're talking about here is how do you feel about this ethically? So I want to know how the men feel about it. Also, even more importantly, I want to know how the ladies feel about it. So pretty privilege is it was a woman. I was in a coaching program with her a few years ago, and she was saying something pretty much like this, that she was at a bar or something like that, and she would sit next to some man and bat her eyelashes, and because she was attractive, at least to the man, he liked her, so he would be buying her drinks and stuff like that, and she didn't have to pay for anything, and that's pretty privilege. Or even getting a promotion at work just because the boss likes you. The boss is a man and he's attracted to you regardless of his situation. He might even have a wife at home and he might be twice your age, but because he likes you, you get to move up, you get a certain situation. Again, women have access to that. Someone, Matt Exact on Instagram, I'm taking all comments at the end, but I saw this comment. He says, they're a handsome privilege. I don't think so. I've never heard of it. Or maybe I'm just not attractive enough, but I don't think there's a such thing as handsome privilege unless you're dealing with a gay man. I don't think that does the thing to women. So anyway, so it is a real thing. Miss Sis says, yeah, I know it's a real thing. I know pretty privilege is a real thing. And we also know that sleeping your way to the top is a real thing. The difference is with pretty privilege, you can pretty much see it. You can see it outwardly. Like I can walk into a business, even if I don't work there, I can walk into a business and see a woman who works at that business. This could be something as basic as McDonald's, or some high level Fortune 500 consultancy company where they're sitting there in some high rise building, then I can see, okay, there are women in here who may have moved up just because they're attractive, or they may be able to get their point across, or get listened to, or get heard more often, or get their emails responded to, or their phone calls answered just because of who they are. And this is part of the deal. This is one of the reasons why a lot of men, when men run businesses and they have, a physical location, who they usually have as their secretary or administrator. Often the secretary or administrator is a woman. Why do they have a secretary or administrator as a woman? Oftentimes because they want an attractive woman who will entice the business, entice the opportunities. Not every business does that. Some people will have a man. Some people have a woman who is not there for that reason. At least it doesn't appear that they are. But this is one of the allures of how business works. It works like this for a reason. It is set up like this for a reason. And men understand this. Smart men understand this. Smart men understand that if they're doing business with other men, especially if you're doing business with men who might be kind of lonely, men who might be a little bit, past their prime as men, then you may get some women to work for you, because having those women work for you will entice the men to do what? Answer the phone more often, come to the office more often, come to your showroom, come to your business. And if you get them in a room, then you have an opportunity to close the deal. Is this part of the game? Yes, it is. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, sex it's there. All right. Sometimes we're talking about it openly like we're doing right now, but it is always bubbling under the surface. Anytime you have men and women interacting with each other, the prospect of sex, I don't mean the prospect of it actually happening. I just mean the concept of there being some type of sexual energy between the men and the women always exists. And I believe a smart business person should use it if you have the opportunity to use it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Use what you have to get what you want. At the same time, I do believe there is a line to be crossed on a moral level. There is a moral line to be crossed. And again, this is the reason why I'm asking the ladies out there, because I think this is much more of a thing for women dealing with men than it is men dealing with, I don't think men dealing with women. It could be a thing, men dealing with women. I have heard of it, but definitely not as prevalent. If you saw the movie Horrible Bosses many years ago, that movie was a comedy, but there was a situation in that movie where Jennifer Aniston was, I think it was like a dentist. She was a head dentist, and then she had a dental hygienist working for her, and there was a man, and she was like this nymphomaniac who wanted sex all the time, and she was trying to use her employee for sex. I don't think that happens that often, women trying to get the man as opposed to men trying to get the women. I think it's much more men trying to get the women. And anyway, that was a comedy. In real life, I think it's much more the men trying to get the women. So pretty privilege is a thing, but pretty privilege goes to a different level when you're using your vagina to move yourself forward in a career. Mrs. on Instagram says, I appreciate those that even though they may not be blessed in good looks department, still take pride in dressing nicely, etc. Yeah, of course. And I worked with a girl who would take her wedding ring off to get more tips at the bar. Yes, exactly. That's right. And she would take her wedding ring off, and she told her husband he wasn't mad, but can't be me, LOL. Okay, so well, see, that's exactly what I mean. See, different women draw the line at different places, but I understand why a woman would do that, because if you got a wedding ring on, then the man may be less inclined to flirt. Again, it's not even because the man thinks he's going to take the bartender home. It's because he wants the prospect of it. And that's the whole concept of, there was a movie back in the day. I don't remember the name of the movie. I don't even think I saw the movie, but the whole point of it is, and 50 Cent said this in one of his songs, is that, and he had a song called PIMP. I remember that 50 Cent song, PIMP. And he said in the song, these dudes pay her money because she feeds their fantasies. They pay her because they want her. All right, that's what he was saying. She feeds their fantasies. And he wasn't necessarily talking about the women out there being hoes, because there's no fantasy. You get it for real. But he was also referring to women who do any form of sex work where it doesn't go as far as sex. So OnlyFans, stripping, etc. What is that? She's feeding the fantasy of the man. The man can fantasize in his head what the situation could be, and he's willing to spend money to keep that fantasy going. Again, this is why men go to strip clubs. This is why men sponsor women. This is why men have OnlyFans. This is why men could be, again, a sugar daddy to a woman, even though he never gets to physically touch her the way he might fantasize about touching her. He never actually does, but he's still willing to put the money on the table. Why? Because there's a fantasy that's being fed, and there's a game that's being played. So the woman who's the bartender that Mrs. mentioned over here on Instagram, she took the wedding ring off, again, not because she's actually saying to the men, hey, I'm not married. I'm going to act like I'm not, and I'm going to do something that goes outside of my marriage. It was to feed the fantasy of the man, because if she has the ring on, his fantasy might die and say, all right, well, she's married, so I'm not even going to flirt with this girl because she got the ring on. But with the ring off, now she can pretend that she's available. And again, that will lead to the man staying at the bar longer, which means he's going to drink more, which means a higher bar tab, which means a bigger tip, which means she's making more money, using what you got to get what you want, or not using it. In that case, taking the ring off so you can show yourself in a different way. And a man could do the exact same thing, but again, I think it's much more prevalent for a woman to do something like this. So moving on, next point here. Men who have a certain amount of power inside of, let's say, a big bureaucratic organization like Fox Sports or some Fortune 500 company, or there have been many stories of this. Any of you watch the news, there have been stories of this in all different industries of men with some level of influence and power using it to gain sexual favors from women, some of whom were willing to exchange those sexual favors. They were willing to play the game, and some who were not. So then that's when you get sexual harassment, et cetera, or you get the he said, she said. So maybe the woman was willing, but then later on, maybe she ends up not liking the man. So then she comes out and says, well, I wasn't willing. So they come out with a sexual harassment claim. And the man's like, wait a minute, she was with this the entire time. We're going to get to that because this Fox Sports story has another twist to it that we're going to get to in a minute. So men with corporate power offering a career boost to a woman in exchange for sex. Is this a thing? In exchange for sex from willing women? The answer is yes, of course this is a thing. This has always been a thing. Most of the time it happens behind the scenes. Most of the time this stuff happens in the shadows. Most of the time people keep quiet about it, even when they know about it, even when they don't like it. They keep quiet about it. And there's a reason why people keep quiet about it inside of big bureaucracies, because you could lose your job. So think about it. If there's a guy who's at, let's say there are levels to an organization. Let's say an organization has 7 levels of power, and there's somebody at level 6 of power. So he's like right below the highest level of power in the organization. You and one of your coworkers are both at a level 3. So let's say you're a man or a woman, and your coworker's a woman, and y'all both at level 3, pretty much equals. And your coworker starts sleeping with the guy who's at a level 6. Now, before you know it, she's not at a level 3 anymore. She moves up to a level 4 and even up to a level 5, just because she's sleeping with the guy who's at a level 6. But you, either because you're a man and you wouldn't even think about it, or because you're a woman and you're not willing to play the game, you still stay at a level 3. But you believe you and your coworker are pretty much equal in skill set. How would you feel about that? You're like, all right, me and her are pretty equal in skill set, but now she's 2 levels above me, 2 pay grades above me, even though our skill sets are pretty much the same. And you know why it happened. You know that she's there only because she's sleeping with the guy in the executive position, and you're a woman as well. And the executive lets you know, hey, you can get the same promotion if you sleep with me too. You don't want to, because you're married, or because you have certain principles or lines that you don't want to cross. You don't move up. She's making 2 levels of pay above you, and you got to stay there at the level 3, maybe even lose your job. Or let's say you don't lose your job. Let's say you keep your job. What do? Well, ain't really much you can do. Well, actually, there's a few things you could do, but would you do them? Because let's say you and that coworker are kind of, sort of friends. Let's say y'all are friends, just like this situation with the Fox Sports. And the executive lets you know in a roundabout way, hey, if you sleep with me the same way your coworker slept with me, your coworker/friend slept with me, you can move up 2 levels as well. And you don't really want to do it. So you stay right there at that level. You could go to HR and make a situation out of this, but HR might ignore you because HR, they got bosses too. And they may just bury it because they don't want this level 6 guy to be exposed. Maybe he has that much power. You could do exactly what this Fox Sports woman did, the stylist, and go call yourself a lawyer and file a lawsuit. Now, at this point, you're burning everything down. You're burning the bridge. You're like, I'm just going to tear all of this down and just destroy the whole situation. You could do that as well. The challenge with doing that is, remember, this coworker might be kind of, sort of your friend. So if this coworker is your friend, now you're throwing your friend under the bus. See, this is the thing that happened with the Fox Sports situation. This woman, this stylist, this kind of thing happens all the time. But most of the time we don't hear about it because the stylist, she was friends with Miss Taylor, who kind of got thrown way under the bus in this situation. Because now with Joy Taylor, now is like, first of all, you're married to another man and you're having sex with your boss at work in order to move yourself forward. So you kind of look like a hoe. Secondly, you're sleeping with two of your coworkers at the same time. So you kind of look even more like a hoe. And the third thing is, and we're going to get to the third thing in a minute, but she's looking really bad. The third, it's actually two other things I got to get to. I'll get to both of them before we get done with everything we're talking about here. Two more things about that specific situation that I'll get to. And this can be a dirty game. What do you do in that situation? You either keep quiet and say nothing, even though you know that you're equal in skill to your coworker who's now 2 levels above you, and you could be bitter and angry and annoyed about that. But the only way you can get restitution is either by getting that executive fired. And to get the executive fired, you're going to have to throw your friend under the bus because you got to call out the executive, and it might not work. Let's be clear about that. You might call out the executive and it doesn't work. Let's say you just end up getting fired. You file a lawsuit and your lawsuit doesn't win. All right, now you're on the outside with no job. Your friend is still working there 2 levels above. Y'all ain't friends anymore because you tried to throw her under the bus in the process and you didn't get anything. That could happen. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people keep quiet. This is one of the reasons why a lot of people don't say anything, because they don't think it's going to work out, and they've seen other people try and other people fail. So they're like, well, I'm not going to say anything. Here's where I can understand how some women say, well, see, this is the reason why a lot of assaults don't get reported. This is the reason why the Me Too thing became a thing. Not that I agree with it generally, but I understand why some people have this position, because there have been many situations where a woman has had something, let's say some sexual impropriety done towards her or offered to her. She went and said something. She didn't get heard. It didn't get listened to. It did not end up succeeding getting the outcome that she wanted. Now she's scorned. Now people are trashing her for even trying, and she didn't get the outcome that she wanted. And that sets an example for everybody else. They're like, all right, well, let me keep quiet. All right, something happened to me. Let me be quiet. Let me not say anything. So I understand why some women may come to this conclusion and say nothing, or why some women may say, well, see, this is why other women don't say anything. I can understand that. Doesn't mean it always happens that way, but I can understand how some people can see it in that view. At the same time, this is a game, and it is a dirty game. And at some point, you have to learn how to play the game. And this is why I believe that when it comes to this kind of stuff, especially on this subject, is a much more, thank you for that gift, whoever sent that, Renata. I think this is a much more tricky game for women than it is for men. It's much more tricky for women, because a man, there's only one ladder that a man can climb for the most part when it comes to success, career success. There's only one ladder you can climb. You got to start at the bottom as a nobody, assuming that you don't know anyone or know your family doesn't own the company. You start at the bottom of the ladder as a nobody, and you have to work and earn your way up through your actual performance and actual substance. There is no shortcut for a man. There's no shortcut for a man to get up to the top, again, unless you happen to be bloodline related to somebody who's somebody in the company. Outside of that, there's only one process that you can follow. You got to take the stairs. For a woman, yes, you could take the stairs as well. But again, I understand, because women have traditionally, when I say traditionally, I mean going way back to like 100 to 50 to 100 years, women weren't always even part of the workforce. Women also give birth. So women don't have as many years in working as men have. So for a woman to try to take the stairs going up against a man, she's already facing an uphill climb. That's one thing. And secondly, because women have the option, they don't always use it and they don't always have it, but the option of pretty privilege, the option of using sex to move themselves forward. Women have an option of jumping the line. Women have an option of taking the elevator rather than taking the stairs. Men don't have that option. You're a man in the business world. You don't have the option of taking the elevator. How are you going to take the elevator? Unless your dad owns a company, you can't take the elevator. You got to work your way up. A woman could take the elevator if she's willing to do certain things. Not all women are willing to do it, but this is part of it. And this is what we call playing the game. In the Players Club, this is exactly what those women were saying. Use what you got to get what you want. And there are some women who will do it, and there are some women who won't. And they can be at the same level of attractiveness, same age, same everything. Some women will do it. Some women won't do it. All right. This is not a fair game, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make sure everybody understands that. This game ain't fair. I heard someone use this analogy that you take a town like Miami, where I live. In Miami, you see some people partying on a boat. Now, you ever see these? Those of you who live in Miami, you may have seen it. Maybe you've been on one, but you see people partying on a boat. You look on social media, you'll see this. So they got this yacht, and there's 20 people on the yacht, and they're having a party, and they got a drone camera filming it, and they're filming it all, putting it on social media to show you how beautiful the life is that they're living. here's the thing you got to understand. Every man that's on that boat had to earn his way onto the boat. You can't just get on a man had to earn his way onto the boat. The people who are on it, either they're the ones who paid for it. They paid for the boat. They paid for the trip. They paid for the party. They paid for the DJ. They paid for the food. They paid for the drinks. They paid for the cameraman. They had to pay for everything that's on that boat. And there's a lot of work that goes into getting in that position. The women who are on the boat, how much work they had to do to get on the boat? Not much. What the women had to do to be on the boat? They just had to be attractive and get invited to the party. These are two different games. So for a woman to go from level 1 to level 10, if she's attractive enough and catches the eye of the right man who's already done the work, she could go right up there and hang out at level 10, just like the men, just like the level 10 man. A man who's at a level 1, only way he gets up to level 10, he got to work his way to level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's no shortcut for a man. Is this a fair game? No, this is not a fair game. At the same time, the trade-off is, for men and women, is that when that woman is no longer the hot girl, she's no longer that attractive, there's a new wave of young women to come in and take her spot. Now she goes right back to level 1, and there's no way for her to jump up because she doesn't have the same assets available that she had 10, 15, 20 years ago when she was the hot girl. That's the trade-off. The trade-off for a man is that if you work your way all the way up to level 10, there's not many things that can happen that will knock you back down to a level 1. Once you work your way up to a level 10, you have made yourself into a level 10 person. So again, there are different ways that these things work. One is a slow way, one is a quick way, but one lasts longer than the other. And I'm painting with a very broad brush here. There are caveats and details to this that I'm skipping over, but that's not really what the conversation is about here today. But I just want to make sure all of you understand. So what I tell people, I talked about this in one of the episodes of my show. Don't complain, play the game. This is the game. This is the game that we're talking about here. If you're a man, you have to earn and work and struggle and strive and discipline your way all the way to the top of the ladder. There is no other way. Again, unless your dad owns a company. If your dad don't own a company, this is the only option you got. You got to work your way up. And it takes a whole lot longer for you to go from nobody to somebody as a man. This is the reason why many men, this is statistically proven, men hit their financial stride between the ages of 45 and 55. Why? Because it takes us that long. Let's say you enter the workforce when you're 20 something. It takes you 25 to 35 years to hit your stride and become the best version of you, because you have to work. You got to work your way all the way up and develop all those skills to get there. And I don't even know what the stats are when women hit their financial stride. The difference is women and men are not running the same race. When we're talking from this angle that I'm talking about here today, from this angle, we're not talking about the same thing. So is this fair? No. But is this the game? Yes. All right. The game has never been fair. The game never will be fair. If you're a woman, I remember I heard Candace Owens, she was talking about this, that when she was in college, she had a friend that was a friend who would like go to the parties with the entertainers. And this girl she was an attractive girl, and she would use what she had to get what she wanted. And at one point in college, Candace tells this story that she went down to Miami. This is Candace talking. She goes to visit her friend in Miami. Her friend was living in Miami, and this is probably like early 2000s, maybe let's say 2005 to 2010 time period, something like that. And her friend was living in Miami. She had a condo in Miami, like in Miami Beach, and it was a beautiful condo, and it was all paid for. And this girl was living large, this friend. And the reason this friend was living so well is because her lifestyle was sponsored by these men who she was willing to do favors for. And that's how she was getting on and living the way that she wanted to live. And Candace said that she left Miami from visiting her friend, went home, and Candace, was crying because Candace was the type of woman who she wasn't willing to do the kind of stuff that her friend was willing to do. So she was struggling at that time. Candace was like, I could barely put food on my table. And she's like a college student. So I wasn't making any money at all. My friend is living large. We're the same age, but she was willing to do stuff I wasn't willing to do. Look how she's living, look the way I'm living. And Candace was really struggling at that time. And then she went on to say that maybe 5-10 years later, she got out of touch with that friend, wasn't really talking to her much. Candace says she was in LA, I believe it was LA, and she went to a hotel in LA to check in. And this is when Candace Owens had become somebody. Now she had built up her career. She was somebody now. She was staying in the hotel, and the woman working at the front desk was that same friend from Miami back in the day, because this girl wasn't the hottest girl anymore. All that money she was getting from certain entertainers had dried up. She wasn't living in Miami in a condo anymore. And now she was trying to make ends meet, and she was working at the hotel at the front desk. And Candace said that story it told me that I made the right decision, that I knew that if I didn't sell myself out, so to speak, the way that my friend had done, that I would build something that would last longer and that would matter more and would stand the test of time. And that was the story she was telling. And this is the kind of challenge that a woman this kind of question a woman has to answer for herself. Again, men, you don't really have this option. This is not a question you even have to answer, because the proposition will never be made to you. But for women, this is an option. This is a choice that you get to make. Do I want to build something that's going to last for much longer, or do I want to do something that might pay off quickly, but I don't know what I'm going to do 5-10 years from now when I'm not that girl anymore? Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Whether you choose whichever one you choose, not necessarily a bad thing. Now, here's what I'll say as a man. I wouldn't want my mom to have been this girl. I wouldn't want my sister or wife to have been this. I wouldn't want any woman who's in my world to have had that kind of background. I wouldn't want any woman who's in my world, wife, sister, mom, daughter. I wouldn't want them to be the person who says, all right, I'm going to sleep with the executive to move myself up, even if she was single. If my daughter is single and she goes to work and works at a company and the executive vice president offers her, hey, sleep with me and you can move up in the company. If she doesn't actually like him, if they're not actually dating and it's just sleep with me just because it's going to help your career, I wouldn't want my daughter to have the principles instilled in her that she thinks that's a good idea. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want my mom to have done that, to move herself up, even if it meant she made twice as much money. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want my sister doing that, even if it would have made her more money. I wouldn't want that. At the same time, I know women who have made similar decisions, and it doesn't make them bad people, but I wouldn't want my sister doing it. I wouldn't want my mom doing it, and I wouldn't want my daughter doing it. So that's the paradox, that I get it, doesn't mean I would do it. I get it, doesn't mean I would do it. And we got to be able to hold both ideas in our heads at the same time. And all the time. Now let's get back to Joy Taylor. I want to get back to Miss Taylor because there's something specific about Miss Taylor that I want to address here that goes into this whole conversation about feminism that we know has been happening in society in general. There was a clip. Again, I don't follow these folks. I don't watch these people's content. I don't even watch Fox Sports. But there was a clip that was on social media. It was going around social media maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Some of you may remember this. Miss Taylor was doing a podcast with another female. And these two women were talking about what type of men they wanted to date. I believe that was the framing of the conversation. That was a clip taken out of the full context, but the clip made the point that I want to make here. And it was the point that she was making. And what Miss Taylor was saying was that her and her friend conversing like, hey, what kind of man do you want to date? Because at this time, I believe they were both at least purporting to be single women who weren't able to find the type of man that they would want to settle down with. I didn't even know that she had been married, Miss Taylor. I didn't know that she had been married. At this point, she wasn't married anymore. And one of the things that she was saying was, well, the man needs to be physically attractive. He needs to be funny, make me laugh. And the third thing is he needs to have financial resources. And if the man has those three things, or specifically the financial resources, she emphasized the financial resources, then all these principles and standards, this is her talking, all the principles and standards that women talk about they need to have, et cetera, we'll throw all those away if the man has enough money and he's physically attractive. And she was saying it kind of as a tongue-in-cheek thing. And this clip started to get redistributed on social media a couple of days ago after this lawsuit came out, because people are like, well, look at this. Now that we know now, or at least the allegations, this is all in a lawsuit. So is it true or not? We don't know. I'll get to what I think about the lawsuit in a second. But now that these allegations have come out, people are like, well, now we can look at that comment in a completely different light, because the way she was talking, there was a lot of, as the saying goes, a lot of truth is said in jest. A lot of times when we're joking, we're actually telling the truth, but we mask it as a joke. And what she was saying was supposedly a joke, but it sounded like she was telling the truth. Now that we have heard these allegations that came from a woman that she was friends with, that was doing her styling at Fox Sports. Like, hey, if the man has money, then I'm willing to throw away everything. Again, she was saying it as a joke, but sounds like that's what she was doing if the allegations in this lawsuit are to be believed. I got to keep saying that because, nowadays people got lawyers. So If the allegations are to be believed, she was throwing these things, she was putting these things out there that was actually telling her truth. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing y'all got to catch. And why I mentioned feminism is that this wave of feminism, especially women who are career women, especially those who are in the public eye where they have a platform where they can put their voice out there. Like they can do a live stream. They have followers on social media. They're influential. They have a bunch of audience listening to them. There's a lot of women who, and I'm interested in how the women feel about this. There are a lot of women, including Miss Taylor, and this is the reason why I'm talking about her, who come out and they say things like, well, you know, as a woman, for me to achieve the level of success that I have, and again, this is usually women who have achieved something and they're noted for their success. They're noted for their position. For me to achieve the success that I've achieved, you know, I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition or get half the opportunity or get half the rewards. And Miss Taylor is on the record saying things like this. Well, you know what? For me to get the position that I'm in, you know, I had to work twice as hard and to only get half the opportunity. And, you know, I don't want anybody, and I'm paraphrasing here, nobody should be talking down on where I'm at because I had to work really hard to get my position and earn my status and this, that, and the third. These are things that she was saying out of her own mouth years ago and basically putting herself on a pedestal like, hey, I earned everything that I got, so nobody should talk down on my position because look at all the effort I had to give to be a woman to make it, quote unquote, in this industry that is mostly dominated by men because it is the sports talk industry. So most of the time when we have people talking about sports and it's men's sports they're talking about, it's not like they're having conversations about the fucking WNBA. They're having conversations about NFL football, NBA basketball. Those are the two biggest sports that usually get talked about on these sports talk shows. That's what they're talking about. Usually there are men dominating that. She has found herself as one of the opinionators on one of these shows. And her whole thing, her position that she put herself on, she said this out of her own mouth, is that I had to work twice as hard to get half the opportunity and basically making it seem like she earned it. And this is the reason why she's in the position that she's in. Now that we've heard what we've heard through this lawsuit, again, allegations, now it makes it seem like that she was just straight up grandstanding, just fronting, as we said. She was just fronting, talking all this shit about how she earned her position when she didn't earn her position, unless you count sleeping with the boss earning your position. Not in the context that we're using it here. Earning, when I say earning, what we mean is you worked your way up the same way I said a man has no choice but to work his way up because a man can't sleep his way up. He has to work his way up. If you see a man at the top, you know he earned it. There's no other way to get there, again, unless he's related to somebody. You see a woman at the top, well, there's questions. And the reason why I said I'm interested to see how the women feel about this is because there are women out there who have actually earned their way to the top. They did actually work their way up. They were not willing to cross that line and use sex in order to move themselves forward. And they did actually earn their way up. And what I believe, this is the way that I look at it, is that a woman who has actually earned her way up and women who have, when they see a woman like Miss Taylor, assuming that these allegations are true, we'll find out. Actually, I don't think we'll find out. I think what's going to happen is this lawsuit is going to get settled out of court and nobody's ever going to make a real statement about whether things are true or not. There's going to be a non-disclosure agreement and we'll all have to draw our own conclusions. I'll get to my conclusion in a moment. That there are women out there who have earned their way up, that when accusations like this come out against people like Miss Taylor, who went out there in grandstand and said, hey, everybody, I earned my way up, and it turns out that she didn't, it makes the women who did actually earn their way in look funny. It makes them look funny. Because now any man who wants to look at things cynically can look at any woman and say, well, yeah, you say you earned your way up, but look at all these women over here who said the same thing. Turns out they were sleeping with the boss. That's how they got up there. So you know what? You might be lying too. So you know what? I don't believe you earned your way up. And even though you actually did, now the doubt is cast on you because of your peers, other women who've gotten to the top. They were selling their access to sex. They were selling sex as a way to move themselves forward. You didn't, but because you're a woman and they're a woman, now people are looking at you funny. All right, this is my problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a black person, this is my problem with it. My problem with it is that the people who are able to achieve certain status, positions, contracts, accolades, etc., based on diversity, equity, and inclusion quotas and demands that are set by companies and governments, etc., they make every black person who gets anything look like it. There is this plausible deniability, let's just say, for lack of a better term, that someone who can't benefit from DEI could look at any black person and say, well, the only reason you got that contract, the only reason you're on the stage, the only reason you got this opportunity is because DEI, we had to hire a black person. So that's why you got the job. So then someone like me who doesn't get business based on DEI, somebody could look at me and say, well, Dre, it might be, the question might be, I ain't saying you ain't good, Dre, but you might only have this job because of DEI. Why? Because look at all these other black people who only got their jobs because of DEI. So it makes people like me look bad. It makes people like me who actually earned our position look bad because of all these bum motherfuckers who couldn't get a position without DEI. They got it by DEI. So now it makes me look bad because I look like them. That's why I'm not a fan of it. See, I am not a anti-fan of DEI because I don't want those, because I'm hating on them or whoever those DEI folks are. Not because I'm hating on them. I give a damn about what happens with them, but because of how it reflects on me. And it's the same thing that I think some women may think. I think, again, I'm not a woman. I think women, let me know. Do you agree with what I'm saying here? Do you women agree, yes or no, that when other women sleep their way up, then that casts a doubt on you in any accomplishment you get? Because other men, a cynical man or a woman, could look at you and say, well, hey, all these bitches slept their way up, so you probably did too, even if you didn't. All right, so people could just look at you crazy just because you look like the other people who did something that was, again, what they may believe is unbecoming. That's the issue that I have with this. And the biggest issue I have with Miss Taylor, again, I don't follow her material overall, but that clip right there got a lot of traction on social media when she originally put it out there. And it was like, Crestball, I see you over there on Instagram. Good morning. And it was like, oh, well, and there were a lot of men out there, I guess what some people call colloquially simping. Baby Lynn G, I see you over there on Instagram as well. I guess men call it simping these days when men are like kissing up to women on the internet. Because when this clip came out, because Joy is, I believe she's either mixed race or she's brown. And the woman she was on the show with is also brown. What's that other woman's name? I believe it's Taylor Rooks. I believe that's who it was. And they're both brown. Either they're both mixed or black, but they're both brown skin. So they're talking and they're saying this, hey, we're successful women who have achieved a certain amount of status in this industry. We can't find men who are suitable for us. That was the context of the conversation. We can't find men who can measure up to our standards. And that's when she made this comment about he needs to be fine, he needs to be funny, and he needs to have finances. That's what the chick, Joy, Miss Taylor, said. So now that clip, when it came out, there were a lot of men saying, you know what? Yeah, a lot of men got to measure up, and these women are so physically attractive, and they can make money, and they have status. Yeah, a lot of men got to measure up to get to them. There are a lot of men saying this. I'm not a fan of men talking like this, and there were a lot of women who co-signed it as well, saying, yeah, a lot of men got to raise up and get to the level that these women are at because look at what they've earned to get to their position. Now we find out that they didn't earn shit. No, let me just speak on Miss Taylor. They didn't say anything about the other chick who was on the show. So this makes them look bad. It makes the whole group look bad when somebody in the organization is doing bad. This goes to a bigger conversation about just our neighborhoods and the way that we conduct ourselves. I could do a whole conversation on this. Make sure I don't go too deep into the woods here, but in our communities, it used to be in our communities that if people are already established in a neighborhood and then some new people move into the neighborhood and they're acting in a way that is not acceptable to the neighbors who've already been there, the neighbors who have already been there would check them and say, yo, y'all can't act like that here. You can't come here and behave like this, or we're going to run you out of this neighborhood. But what's happening in our world today, and in the bigger picture, United States of America, this is what's happening. It's also happening in the UK, but I'm going to speak on the USA because that's where I live. In the United States, we have an established culture that was established over decades here in America, centuries and decades here in America. And there was a certain culture and a certain establishment, a certain way we conducted ourselves. Black people, white people, everybody who lived here. What's happened is we've allowed an influx of people who are not from here to come in here and behave however they want to, and nobody's checking them. See, it's not that people are coming in and it's wrong just because they're coming in. It's not just that they're coming in, because there are people who have come in and they conduct themselves the right way. They assimilate to what we have here in our culture. And when you step into somebody else's house, you got to conduct yourself how they conduct themselves in their house. I'm going to do a whole live just talking about immigration, but I'm giving you a sampling of it. If I go to your house, right, and you say, hey, in our house, we ask everybody to take their shoes off at the door and leave your shoes at the door so you don't walk around on our carpet with your shoes on. I can't just say to you, well, fuck that. Where I'm from, I walk around with my shoes on in the house all day and then just do it. And you are going to accept that. You're not going to accept that. You're going to say, wait a minute. You're in my house. Now, if you're in my house, this is what I'm asking you to do. If you don't want to conduct yourself by the rules in my house, get out of my house. All right. Any one of you who's listening to this would do that. And I would do the same thing to you in my house. But in America, we're allowing people to come in here, conduct themselves however they feel like it, not holding them to our standards, not asking them to assimilate at all to the standards that we've already established. And then when someone says something like what I'm saying right now, hey, we can't just let people come in here, just do whatever the hell they want to do. They have to adapt to the way that we are here. And if they don't want to do that, they got to go. People say, well, I'm the problem because I'm anti this or xenophobic or whatever phrase people are using these days because you're not accepting of people coming in. No, we don't have to be accepting of people coming in. This is our space. Again, do you accept somebody just walking in your house and sitting on the couch and going in your refrigerator? Would you just let them come in? Of course not. You would say something. And when I do my live on immigration, I'll talk about this more. I'm not even going to get into that even further. And I saw a comment over here. Miles said, it's not our duties. We don't own the land. I didn't say anything about the land. I'm talking about the culture. What I'm talking about is the culture. It's not about the land. It's about people coming into your space and you telling them what it's going to be. So I'll give you an example. So Charles Barkley, y'all know Charles Barkley, right? Former basketball player, now known as a sports commentator. He did a book with, I believe it was him and Mike Wilbon. Mike Wilbon is a guy who does Pardon the Interruption on ESPN. He's a well-known sports journalist for many years. He sold himself out during the virus a few years ago. But overall, I like Mike Wilbon. Mike Wilbon and Charles Barkley wrote a book together. And they're both black guys. And they're both probably 60-ish years old. And Mike Wilbon does a TV show called Pardon the Interruption. His partner on the show is a guy named Tony Kornheiser. Tony Kornheiser is a white J man. I got to be careful. I don't know if I can say the J word. I know what I'm talking about. His religion starts with the letter J. So Tony Kornheiser and Mike Wilbon are partners. They've been working together on this show for like 25 years. So Charles was talking about in the book, they were talking about the black community and how the black community could better itself. And one of the things that Charles said, this is when Charles was keeping it way real. He don't keep it as real as he keeps it a little less real now. Actually, he absolutely does keep it a lot less real now than he used to. But one of the things that he said in that book was in the black community, one of the problems is we tolerate idiots. We tolerate people in our community who look like us doing the wrong thing. And then we don't call them out. We don't hold them accountable and we don't run them out of the community. And he said, when I was talking to Tony Kornheiser, who's again, the J, I talked to Tony Kornheiser and I said, Tony, in the J community, if someone's in your community who looks like you and they are acting like they don't have any sense, what do y'all do? And Tony said, we get rid of them. And Charles Barkley said, that's exactly the point. Because see, in our community, in the black community, this is true. Charles said this, I'll say it as well. In the black community, when we have an idiot, someone who's acting like they don't have any sense, we used to get rid of them. Back in the 80s and the 90s, there was a black person act like they had no sense. A black person would check them and say, yo, you can't conduct yourself like that here. You're making us look bad. You're bringing down the community. You're bringing down the property value of these houses. You can't be conducting yourself like that here. You got to go. And we would get rid of that person. We would get rid of them. Nowadays, what do? We celebrate them. Now, if you call out a black person and you're black, then you're somehow a sellout. You're somehow trying to appease white people by calling out a black people. It's ridiculous. A black person. That's ridiculous. And that's why our communities are in the position that they're in. I'm saying all that to say this. I'm making a bigger picture point here. The main point that I'm focusing on here today is that for women, if you know that you earned your way to your position or you're aiming to earn your way to a position, but then a woman is out here telling everybody she earned her way in, but then we find out that she didn't. She sexed her way up. Now that diminishes the value of anything that you've earned. And when I get to talking about communities and immigration and all this stuff, I'm going to go into this whole subject. Let me write this down. I'm going to just write down the point that I'm going to do a whole live on immigration and what I feel about it, because I heard those two brothers that got kicked off social media the other day talking about this on their platform. They're talking about they're going to run for political office in the United Kingdom. Y'all see this? So they claim they're going to run for political office. But one of the things the guy was saying was, hey, we're going to shut down all this immigration. We're not going to just let people come into our country. And there's an argument for that. That if you step into somebody else's land, there are certain rules you got to follow. And you have to adapt, to their culture. You can't just do whatever you want to do when you're on somebody else's land. And that is a thing. And it used to be a thing. And it used to get established. It's not established anymore. Now What's happened is the culture has shifted such that if you call people out for coming into your space and doing whatever you want to do, or them doing whatever they want to do in your space, you're the bad guy instead of them being the bad guy. It used to be they were the bad guy because they weren't following the rules of the culture that was already established. Now you're the bad guy for telling them that they need to adjust to what you're doing. And again, this is literally what conservatism means. The very word conservative means you are conserving the values and the cultures and the established beliefs that have already existed. That's what being conservative means. These are the standards. These are the principles. We want to conserve these standards and principles, and we want to keep them as they are. Whereas liberal means, well, it's just do what you want to do. And again, I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but that's generally what it means. Liberal is like, oh, do what you want to do. You want to change the rules, change the rules. You don't want to honor the principles, don't honor the principles. You don't want to follow the standards and the traditions, don't follow them. Just do what you want to do. Whatever makes you happy, whatever feels right to you, just do that. And that's okay. All right. I am a strong believer in principles. First of all, it's not even that it necessarily makes me a conservative, because there are some liberal things I agree with. There's some conservative things I agree with, but I am a firm believer in having established principles, established rules, and established boundaries. And when you remove rules, principles, and boundaries, this is not my belief. It's not a theory. It's a law. There's a scientific law called the law of entropy, that when you remove standards, rules, boundaries, and principles, you get chaos. That is a scientific law. That's not a theory. That's just what it is. If you have no rules, you get chaos. That's how it works. If you don't mow your lawn, the lawn goes crazy. Now, you don't take care of your teeth, you get gum disease and cavities. You don't take care of your body, you get out of shape, fat, and you die early. If you don't take care of your relationships, then you lose the relationship. Everyone agrees with this. Everybody understands it. When there are no rules and no standards and they're not being upheld, you get chaos. In the United States right now, we are starting to get chaos because we are not upholding the rules, standards, and principles. But again, I don't want to go too far into the weeds on that. When I do a whole live just on this subject, I'll talk about it a whole lot more. All that said, let's get into comments about what I talked about here today. So over on YouTube, O-Dog says, I used to get special treatment and attention from women when I was a cute 4-year-old. That stuff wears off quick for a man. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, after 4 years old, everything else you got to earn. That's correct. O-Dog said, I think she was married to Earl Watson. I saw a photo where the guy looked like Earl Watson, but I don't think that was him. O-Dog. I think that guy did look like Earl Watson, but I don't think it was Earl Watson. I'm pretty sure if it was Earl Watson, I would have known about it. It was a guy I looked up who he was, and his name wasn't Earl Watson, but he looked like him. She did earn her position. You had to do yoga and Pilates to get in those positions, allegedly. Well, yeah, she's probably pretty good at it. So let's see. Yeah, she earned it. She did earn it. Yeah, technically, O-Dog, you are correct. She did technically earn the position. Just depends on what you mean by earning. There are a lot of different ways to earn in life. So technically, you are correct. Let's see what we got over on, if we got anything on Instagram. I think I responded to everything people were saying on Instagram. Enigmatic Zach, I saw you over there. I saw you, Crespo Realty, Baby Lynn. I saw it. Okay. Anybody got anything on TikTok? Go ahead and let me know. I saw a lot of notifications about it. I didn't see all the comments. Renata said, unless you're a man, yeah, that works for Diddy. No. Yes, exactly. Yeah, unless you're a man working with you got a gay male boss. Otherwise, men don't have the option. If you're working in an environment that's generally heterosexual, men don't have the option of sleeping your way up. You got to earn your way up. And that pretty much applies to all of life. Where women can earn their way up too. Let me be clear. But it just depends. Women have an option of doing something else if they want to. And if somebody's willing. E. Bioma says, does their cynicism pay my bills? I don't know what you're referring to there. Tanika Robinson said, I never thought of it that way. I don't even know what part you're referring to, but I'm glad whatever it was, it opened your mind to something new. Kick said, as a woman, I don't care. People will always find a reason to discredit your accomplishments. Well, I just pointed out what a legitimate reason is. And this is the reason why, again, as I said, as a black person, I could say the same thing. A woman could say the same thing. A white person could say the same thing. As a matter of fact, everybody in the world actually alive right now has a frame in which they could insert themselves into that sentence that you said there, Kicks. A white person could say, people could find a way to discredit me because I'm white, and people will just say, well, the only reason you're successful is because you're white and the country was made for white people to be successful. So they can discredit you based on that. If you're a woman, they can say, people can discredit you by saying, well, you're a woman, you only got the position because you're pretty, and the boss gave you a job because you're pretty, not because you're actually good. If you're black, they can say, well, you only got the position because of DEI and affirmative action, and somebody had to give you the job because of DEI and affirmative action. You didn't actually earn it. So every group in America, and I'm only missing a few of them, but there are others, that they could say, well, if you're a J, the religion starts with the letter J, you only got your position because J people run everything and you just got it handed down by your family. You didn't actually earn it. You're not actually good. You could say every group in America right now has some frame in which they could put themselves in that sentence. People will discredit me because I'm this, and they could just say that. Traditional All Day says, I agree with everything you stated. This is the game. Most blacks in high positions are DEI. Well, I don't know about most. I can understand that framing, though. Traditional All Day is that people could think that. And that's why a black person who's in a high position who actually earned it can be annoyed by the concept of DEI, because they know that there are people out there who will think the way that you just commented, that says, oh, well, the only reason they're there because of DEI, even though you're not. All right. So it's not everybody there is from DEI. Who knows how many? I mean, and we'll never really know, because most people who get to a certain position based on some type of boost that they were given are not going to admit it. Like if a black person's in a high position because of DEI, are they going to come out and say, hey, I'm here because of DEI? No, because of the way that it's been framed, DEI is almost a pejorative now. So most black people wouldn't admit to DEI being the reason they're where they are, because it kind of makes you look bad. It makes you look like you ain't shit. It makes you look like your position is watered down because you didn't earn it. So nobody would admit it, even if it's true. I know some people who are in positions that they're in because of DEI, but they don't go around saying I'm here because of DEI. They say I'm here because of my resume, because I earned it, et cetera, et cetera. That's just human nature. It's a human ego. Again, the same thing with Miss Joy Taylor. She said, I'm here because I earned it. You got to work twice as hard to get half the opportunity, et cetera, et cetera. Had this lawsuit never came out, we would have had to accept that, because we wouldn't have any reason to not believe it. But when a lawsuit comes out, now it casts shadows on everything that she said about how hard she worked to get to the position that she's in. And again, it makes all the other women look suspect. Now I'm looking at every woman like, maybe you're lying too. All right. So that's the thing. Nobody's going to admit it. No woman who slept her way to the top is going to say, I'm here because I slept with this guy, and that guy. Right. Did you hear Kamala Harris say that? All right. Did you hear Joy Taylor ever say that? No, they never said it, even though it might be true. And now, again, it makes every other woman look suspect. So that's the challenge with it. That's the challenge. That's what I see with it. But again, I like to put things in, often I try to put things in a black and white perspective. Not everything can be black and white, but I try to put it in that perspective because I come from the sports world, and in the sports world, everything is earned. All right. You can't DEI your way onto the court in basketball. You can't DEI your way onto the field in football. It's impossible. If you can't play, you can't play, period. Whereas in the business world, a lot of times you will see people who have no skill whatsoever having a position that they didn't earn, and they can stay there for 10 years. That can't happen in sports. In sports, that's impossible. In business, is very possible. Not only possible, but probable. And that's the difference with, let's say, my approach when I talk about business as opposed to how a lot of other people talk about it. Miles Davis said, what is the value of your dialogue? Well, I got you to comment. We can say that. Tanika said, I would say the most black people in my generation believe we have to work 2 times as hard to get. And Tanika, I generally agree with you. If you're working in a position that is traditionally white dominated, and you are a black person, will you have to do more or maybe produce more to maybe get the same level of opportunity as a white person? I generally agree with the concept. Yes, that is true. At the same time, I do not lament the situation. And there's a difference. So I do something like professional speaking. At the professional speaking business, I'll tell y'all this quick story. This is like 2018. I was trying to find a manager or an agent to find me professional speaking gigs. And I had a conversation with this woman. She was an agent for speakers, and most of her clients were females. And she said to me, well, Dre, here's the thing you got to understand about the speaking business. Even though I work mostly with women, one thing I can tell you, Dre, is that you're black. So you should know that the speaking business is mostly by and for middle-aged white men. And she could see I was relatively young and I was black. So she said, you are facing the same uphill battle that my female clients are facing, because neither of you is middle-aged white males. And I knew that was true even before I had the conversation with her. I know that as a professional speaker, if I end up on a stage, do I need to be? Actually, let me back up. I've seen a lot of professional speakers talk. I've seen a whole bunch of them. Many of them are middle-aged white men with button-up shirts and khakis on, and many of them ain't shit. I'm saying that on the record publicly. I've seen a whole lot of middle-aged white male speakers who are garbage, but they keep getting booked on stages. And I've seen some middle-aged white men who weren't shit speakers. I'm not saying all of them ain't shit, but I've seen a whole bunch of them who ain't shit. And I remember saying to myself, if I got on a stage and gave a speech like what this white man is giving, I would never get booked ever again in my life. I got to be way better than this dude to get the same opportunity. Do I believe that to be true? Yes, I do. I do believe that to be true. At the same time, I don't lament that. I don't look at it as some type of burden, and I don't complain about it. And I'm not bitching about it right now. I'm just telling you that, is that true? Yes, it is. I've seen a whole bunch of bum ass white guys who are professional speakers getting booked. And I'm like, this dude is garbage. Why? Who paid this guy? There's no way I can give that speech and still get on the stage. No way. I've seen that over and over and over again. And I don't even say 2 times better. I say 10 times better. So 2 times might be the truth, Tanika Robinson, but I raise the bar. I put it even higher. I say I don't want to be 2 times, but I want to be 10 times better so that there's no doubt. So if you see me on a stage, you see me giving a TED talk, I tell you that I spoke here and I spoke there, et cetera, et cetera. I'm telling you that when you see that, that meant I had to be 10 times better than all the average middle-aged white guys that they could have chose instead of choosing me. And is that true? I've seen this from personal experience. Yes. I had to go places and prove myself for free in order to get the opportunity to get paid. Whereas I see some white dude who's garbage, never had to prove himself at all and go straight to getting paid. And he was still trash when he got paid. I had to be amazing for free just to get an opportunity to be amazing and get paid. Does that happen? Absolutely. But again, I'm going to be very clear. Do not misconstrue this point. Do not mishear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this makes me some type of victim. I'm not complaining about it. I'm not bitching about it. All right. That's for women and children. I know, Tanika, I believe you're a female, but get my point. All right. If you need to be 2 times as good to get your opportunity, then be 2 times as good. All right. If you know that, then there's no excuses. And I'm saying that to everybody. Everyone listening to this who feels like you need to be 2 or 3 or 10 times better to get an opportunity. Okay. Now you know exactly what your job is. Be 2 times better. So you have no excuses. That's it. If you're a woman and you feel you got to be 10 times better than the men to get your chance, okay, be 10 times better. Now you don't have an excuse. You can't say you didn't know. Okay, that's the rule. That's the rule. Go do it. Period. That's what it is. And again, I told you all where I come from. I come from the sports world. In sports, I played basketball at a Division III college. For those of you who don't understand the sports world, Division I is the players you see on TV. Most of the players you see in the pros, even overseas are players who play Division I college sports. Division I is like Duke, North Carolina, the Final Four, NCAA tournament, March Madness, those guys. I played Division III. Most of the players at the level that I played at don't play pro because they're not even trying to, because they have no ambition. Most of them don't have a lot of talent. I played pro for a decade after playing Division III basketball. And I knew that in order for me to even get one chance, let alone 10 years of chance, to get one chance, I was going to have to be a lot better than the players who have played D1. When I say better, I mean better at outreach, better at marketing myself, better at trying to find chances. I had to be better at doing all that stuff because it's not like they were coming to me. The pro teams weren't coming and knocking on my door like, Dre, we want you to come play for us, because when you play Division III, nobody's checking for you. So for me to get my chance, I had to go check for them. I had to go sell myself to get my opportunity. I didn't bitch about it. I didn't complain about it. And that actually made me better, because now when I tell my story and I tell people, hey, my credibility, when I get on stage talking to a business audience, for example, I stopped playing basketball 10 years ago. When I get on stage to talk to a business audience, people want to know, well, who is this guy and what's his credibility to be talking about things like discipline and mental toughness and going and making it happen and selling yourself. Now, what I just told you tells you my credibility for talking about those things. You understand? Now, I could stress that out and make it an hour-long story, or I could tell you in 30 seconds. I just explained it to y'all in 1 minute. But people need to understand your credibility. My credibility for saying things like, don't bitch, don't complain, don't act like your situation is a burden, or the things that I've actually done, literally done in my own life, build credibility for me to say these things. So when I say, don't bitch about your situation, make it happen anyway, and people say, well, who are you to say that? Well, I just tell you what I just told you. I came from a Division III college and still had 10 years playing sports. Most Division III athletes don't even try to play pro. And even when they try, they fail because nobody wants them. I had to sell myself to get the opportunity. If I say, don't look at a situation where, let's say, other people are getting an easy handout and you had to earn yours, don't complain about that. Just go do it and earn it anyway. Well, what's my credibility? My credibility is what I just told you. I'm a black guy. I do professional speaking gigs. And I know that the white people who book me could easily book a white person who ain't shit. And it's an easy decision to book me. I got to be 10 times better to where I overwhelm what they might be thinking. I had to overwhelm their default settings to get them to choose me. I'm not saying white people are biased and just pick white people, but that happens. Does it happen? Yes, it does. I have to overwhelm their default settings. So let me pick a white guy because we've been picking white guys for the last 30 years. Why would we pick a black guy? Well, this black guy, Dre, damn, he's so good. No, we got to pick him. I understand that's what I got to do. So guess what? Now I'm responsible for that. Because see, once you know something, you're responsible for it. That's the message I'm giving to all of you. So even if you know something and you don't like it, that doesn't mean you're not responsible for it. Everybody understand that? As soon as you know it, you are now responsible for it. You're responsible for using it. You may not agree with it. Doesn't mean you don't know about it. It's like if you send your kid to school. I was talking to one of my coaching clients last week, and actually we had to postpone the call because her daughter was at daycare, and the daycare called her and said one of my coaching clients is a female. And her daughter was at daycare, and the daycare called her and said, your daughter is like looking sick and you got to come get her. And was she probably happy that she had to leave work and miss her coaching call with me to go get her daughter? No. But did she know about it? Yes. Is she responsible for it? Yes. And it's a simple example, but it's the exact same thing with all of you. Once you know about it, even if you hate the reality, you're still responsible for the reality. And Crespo, you're correct. You got to rise above it. That's right. All right, so let me continue back on the comments. I jumped off the comments here. I'm looking at comments on TikTok, by the way. Renata said, physical attraction is not gender-based. I'm sure you receive more views based solely on your appeal. Well, hopefully I do, Renata, but at the same time, you understand what I mean, that a woman can draw more attention. A woman draws more attention for looking pretty than a man draws attention for looking pretty. All right, now, and again, we're talking in the heterosexual world. Now, if I was a gay guy trying to reach gay men, maybe I'd get a whole lot more attention from gay guys. But I'm not gay, and I'm not trying to attract gay men. Shout out to the gay men who may be watching me for the substance. But a woman can absolutely draw more attention for her physical looks than a man draws for his physical looks. So I've never been invited on a yacht party because I was pretty. I know girls who've been invited on yacht parties because they were pretty. I know girls who don't have to stand in line at the club because they're pretty. I never walked up to the line at a bar or a club. I don't go to bars or club, but back in the day, I never walked up to a line at a bar or a club and the bouncer said, hey, you're so attractive. You come to the front of the line. That never happened to me. I know girls who it happened to. I've never seen it happen to a man. So if you know something I don't know, you get my point though. All right. So let's see. Renata said, yes, you have substance, but to attract the audience, your look is complete, well-groomed, etc. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, that if I'm going to get up here and I'm going to talk about things like business and success and discipline, that there is a certain look that goes with it. Renata, you are 100% correct. And congrats on that, having that #1 gifter badge. You are 100% correct on that your look has to match what you're going to talk about. So if I'm going to get on the stage and talk about professionalism in business, then I better look like a professional who does business. That is correct. At the same time, I could be giving this message in a white t-shirt with a snapback. You see my snapback hats up there with a white t-shirt and some basketball shorts. I could give this message with that attire. People would receive it differently because I'm dressed differently, even though I'm the same person saying the same thing. So it does have a different effect on different audiences depending on who it is. Because there are other people, Renata, who will look at this live and they'll see me and they'll say, well, this guy's got a suit on. I can't relate to this guy. I want to hear what he has to say. Whereas I take the same message and I put on a white tee and a hat, people will listen to it and say, well, this guy looks like somebody who I can relate to. I'll listen to him. And I could be saying the exact same thing. So different audiences receive different things for different reasons in different ways. So even, for example, just wearing a suit when I'm not on camera, I'll tell y'all this, that when I go out, like I'm going to go to the grocery store today. When I go out dressed like this, if someone compliments me or says something to me, usually it's an older female or older man, like somebody who's like 50 and up. I'll get a compliment from like a 50 and up man or woman when I'm dressed like this. But when I wear a white t-shirt and shorts and some Jordan sneakers, if I'm getting looks from people, usually it's younger people. It'll be like a younger lady, like a college age lady or a girl who's in her 20s when I'm dressed that way because I look younger. When I'm dressed in the suit, people tend to think that I'm older or they just have a different perception of me, but it's the exact same person no matter what I'm wearing. So it's just different perceptions is the point. It's not a right or wrong thing. It's just people perceive things differently depending on how you present yourself. When I used to wear a white t-shirt and those hats and shorts every day, people would see me and say, you look like a basketball player. I would get that all the time. People ask me, do you play basketball? And I didn't mind the question because I did used to play basketball. I played basketball professionally for a decade. So I didn't mind answering it and saying, yeah, I used to play basketball. The problem is I used to play basketball. Now I run a business. So I changed my uniform to look like what I do now. So now when people see me, they say, well, you look like you do some type of professional work, some type of business. What do you do? And now it segues perfectly into what I do. Whereas if I was dressed like a basketball player and I had to tell people, well, I used to play, but now I do this, that's an extra step in the conversation. So I removed the extra step by changing the way I presented myself. And now people tend to look at me and say, well, this guy must do some type of business because I look like I do business. Doesn't mean you can't do business in a white t-shirt and basketball shorts. I was doing business like that for several years, but I prefer this look. Once I started going with this look and I saw the response I was getting, I liked it. So I kept it up. I don't have to wear a suit if I don't want to. I choose to. So anyway, Ebio Ma says, depends on what they're doing. If it's immoral, then no, they shouldn't do it. It's not necessarily about it being immoral. It's about when you're in Rome, you do as the Romans. That's what it's about. It's about when you step into somebody else's space, you honor the traditions and the customs of that space. That's what it's not about them being immoral. If we say over here, we don't do this and you're in my space, then you got to respect the rules of what we do here. And if you don't respect the rules, we're going to get rid of you. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You can't go in the United States. Again, when I do my conversation on immigration, y'all will understand this more. United States, because of our radical free speech defense, and I defend free speech, but because of it, one of the trade-offs of it is that you can come in America and you can just talk crazy about anything and anyone you want. You can just talk crazy in America about anybody. You can talk crazy about the president in America and it's okay. And again, this is a trade-off of free speech. You can't go to Dubai and talk crazy about their political leader. You can't do that. Any of you ever been to Dubai? I haven't been there. I might end up moving there. But you can't talk crazy about the political leader in Dubai and get away with it. Like, they'll run you out of there. You might not make it out of there. You can't go to the country that starts with the letter C and talk crazy about their leader. Or you won't go home. You ain't making it home. You're gonna be incarcerated for 10 years. You can't just come somewhere in another person's space, space, and just talk crazy or do whatever you want to do just because that's what you want to do, and they're going to sit there and just let you do it. Only in America does that happen. There are a few other countries that are letting it happen as well. But in America, they're letting that happen, and that I believe that's part of the problem that we have in America right now. Is that we're allowing just anybody and everybody to come in here and just do whatever they want to do, and we're demonizing anybody who calls it out. We used to demonize them for doing it. Now we're demonizing people who point it out. I think that's a problem. And again, when I get to talking about this, I'll go into more detail. So Miles said, we come from a slavery culture. What is that referring to? What part of what I'm saying are you referring to? Let's see. Miles said, America does not own America. What are you referring to there, Miles? You're going in a kind of on a tangent here. Maybe you might wait till my immigration arrive. Worker B said, yes, my man. Deontay said, you're providing a biased opinion, no facts. I am giving you my opinion, and everybody's opinion is biased. So biased opinion is a redundant phrase. Everybody's opinion is biased based on their perspective and their life experience, and no facts. What I'm talking about here is not really about a fact. What I'm talking about is a story, and I'm giving you my perspective on it. So I never said that I was providing facts. If you want facts, go on Google. You can get facts from Google. I'm giving you my perspective on a situation that's happening. And the situation is all based on an allegation. So the allegation is a fact, but it's an allegation. We don't know if it's even true or not. We're just discussing it. That's what current events means. You discuss what happened and you give your perspective on it. So what you said is accurate. I don't think you meant it as a statement of declaration. I think you meant it as maybe a critique, but it's not actually a critique because what I'm doing is exactly what I always do. Tommy said, truth telling as usual. Thank you. Miles, what are you talking about? You going way too off topic. I can't respond to these things. You're talking about a bunch of things that I'm not discussing. But come back to our when I talk about immigration, maybe some of the things you said might work. Paulina said, I have found the most TikTok creators I follow are Black and the most educated people I have ever seen. Okay, it's interesting. I haven't heard anybody say that. I don't follow anybody on TikTok, so I don't know who is creating on TikTok, but hopefully you're putting me in that category of being one of the most educated people you've ever saw. So thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. Brandon said, people will call you crazy, but you have to shoot for the stars and end up higher than the rest. Generally, that's correct. Thank you, Paulina, for the heart. Tara said, I can definitely agree. Thank you. Miles, you're spamming with my comments. Miles, you got to chill. You're spamming with my comments. I'm going to have to kick you out of here. All right. Miles got to go. Everybody say goodbye to Miles. You got to go. He's spamming my comments too much. All right. So I'm going to take a couple more comments. And if you got any, and I'll respond to it. So Crespo said on Instagram, my brown son was always a target for white people, but I taught him to rise above, be educated. Don't let them make you a statistic. He's now owner of a business. That's great. Congratulations. What kind of business does he own, Crespo? What kind of business did he start? So Miles' last comment before I kicked him out, he said, you are the smart guy and cannot comprehend where my points are from. Well, I wasn't really reading your points. You were spamming. When I say you're spamming, what I mean is you're leaving way too many comments about things that I'm not even talking about. So that's why I had to kick you out. Well, kick him out. He's gone now. All right. So anyway, I am going to do a live talking about immigration, because once I started going on a tangent talking about it here, I realized I could do a whole live just on that. Don't know when I'm going to do it. We'll see what current events happen today. Because these live streams, by the way, for those of you who don't know, if this is your first time seeing me, I do these based on current events. So what I do is I talk about something that has happened in the news, and I'll discuss that thing. This thing that I talked about today, this just happened like 2 days ago. That's why I talked about it. Yesterday, I talked about January 6th, like the infamous January 6th, not literally January 6th yesterday. And moving forward, it'll just be a current event. So if something happens in the news today that I think is newsworthy, then that'll be tomorrow's live. If nothing big happens, then I'll talk about something that's still a current event, but it's more like, it's not like super, super time sensitive, such as immigration. That's always going to be a topic. So I am going to do a live on immigration. So I'm glad that that got sparked by something maybe one of you said. So I will talk about what I think about it and how it needs to be done the right way. I did talk about it last week when I was talking about Vivek Ramaswamy's comments about the H-1B visas and bringing in tech talent and all that stuff. But I'm going to go deeper. So do I post my lives on YouTube? Yes. So actually, I should have mentioned that earlier. All of you who are watching me on TikTok, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Why? Because sometimes, depending on what I'm talking about here on TikTok, there are some people who don't like what I say, and they will band together to try to get my lives flagged and kicked off TikTok. Yesterday, they succeeded for about 10 minutes. They got my live ended, and they got me suspended on TikTok. But then I appealed the suspension, and 10 minutes later, I got approved my appeal, and I was able to start my live up all over again. But that happens often if I talk about certain topics. So when I talked about Kamala Harris, they did it to me. Yesterday, I was talking about January 6th, Donald Trump. They did it to me. One time I was talking about the educational system and trashing the educational system, because it is trash, and they did it to me then. So y'all got to make sure if you're on TikTok, subscribe to my YouTube. I'm on YouTube right now as well. My YouTube the link is in my bio on TikTok. So if I'm ever doing a live and you see it just cut off out of nowhere for no reason, it's because they did it. That's why it happens. And if I get suspended on TikTok, usually suspension lasts like 3 to 7 days. So then I won't. And if I make a post on TikTok telling you what happened, TikTok won't let the post get seen. Like, it'll get no views, no traction, no nothing. They'll just completely suppress the post. And this has happened to me more than once. So make sure you are following me on Instagram and TikTok. Instagram and YouTube. My links to both of those are in my bio on TikTok. So those of you watching me on TikTok, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is right here, and my Instagram. And if you use other platforms like LinkedIn, Rumble, or Facebook, I'm live on all of those platforms right now as well. So I'm live in 7 different places right now: TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Rumble, X, and YouTube. Is that it? And YouTube. Yeah. So make sure you follow me in more than one place. because sometimes people on TikTok don't like what I say. Because sometimes what happens when I do these lives on TikTok, and I appreciate TikTok for this, they put me on the For You page. So that's how many people have found me. I bet most of you found me through the For You page, just the Explore tab. And when you're on the Explore tab, what happens is a whole lot of people who don't know who you are start finding you. Right? And what happens is some of them don't like what you're saying. So they will basically come and they'll start flagging your live so that you can't say what you want to say. And that's the problem. And especially if you're talking about a hot button issue, and usually current events are hot button issues, things that make people mad or happy. So that's the issue. Let's see. I think a couple more comments came in. Let me see what we got. Tommy said, if someone wants to be elite, they have to work 10 times the rest. Yeah, work and produce. That's correct. And so, yes, Ebioma, yes, these are on YouTube. So every live that I do is on YouTube at the same time that is on TikTok. So when I'm done, it will be on YouTube. Someone is a minority is often 10 times the other folks working to be elite. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing. Depending on what you're doing and who you're doing it for, that's correct. Brandon said, I watch you every day and I didn't see your live yesterday. Yeah, I was live yesterday. I was live, and then I got kicked off because the people who disliked it, they flagged it down. And then I appealed, and there was about a 10-minute gap. I was still live, though, on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, X. While I was flagged on TikTok, I was still talking on all these other platforms. Then when my appeal got approved, I just started up a new live on TikTok. So yesterday I had to do 2 lives, but I broke them up. But on all the other platforms, it was just one long live. So Brandon, I was here, but sometimes the powers that be don't like what I'm saying, and they'll flag it down. So that's why I'm on more than one platform, just in case something goes wrong in one, you get something in another. That's the same reason most of y'all, if you only got one bank account, you should open a bunch of them. Open a whole bunch of different bank accounts, even if you just put $1 in it. Why? Because if something goes wrong with one bank, you want to be able to call another bank. I'm not joking. That's not a metaphor. That's real advice. All of you should have more than one bank account. Have like 5. Have 10 if you can. Anyway, AB said TikTok, Instagram, Rumble, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Is that it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is one that you're missing. TikTok. Oh, X, also known as Twitter. I'm also live there too. So shout out to people on Twitter/X. Brandon said, yeah, I'm going to make sure I follow you on YouTube and Insta. Yes, please do. Coco said facts about several bank accounts. Yes, that's an absolute fact. All of y'all, make sure you have more than one bank account. You can open bank accounts from your computer. You don't even have to go to the bank. I can't remember the last time I went in a bank to like put in money or get money. I don't do that. You can do all of it from your computer. There's a lot of banks that are basically internet based. Open up multiple bank accounts because different accounts have different stuff. They have different daily limits. So one day you might need to spend $7,000, but your bank has a daily limit of $3,000. So how are you going to spend the $7,000? There are other banks who let you spend $10,000. So open more than one bank, put a few dollars in each one, use different ones for different things, but you should have more than one bank. Keep your debit cards, your accounts, and all that stuff separate. Have different banks for your business. If you're in business, there are business bank accounts, there are personal bank accounts, there are savings accounts. If you do investing, invest with different apps and different platforms, because anything can happen on any one of these platforms, folks. Anything that you don't own, something can happen and you can't do anything about it. So if you do all your investments through one app, get like 3 or 4 other apps where you do investments. If you buy crypto on one app, get a couple other apps where you buy crypto. You're doing stocks, get multiple apps where you buy stocks. Why? Because anything can happen. All right, so just protect yourself by not depending on any one platform. Same thing you do with social media, do with everything else. If you don't own it, you don't control it, which means anything can happen and you'll be screwed if you weren't prepared. So that's the last piece of advice I'll give you all today. And my duties lives 8 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. So tomorrow I'll be live again at 8 o'clock. Sometimes I start a little bit after 8 o'clock, but around the 8 o'clock time frame is when I start these lives. Tomorrow's topic, to be determined. We don't know yet. That's that. Everybody have a great day. Work on your game. Be out here.